Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 68 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is grit. Our quote of the day comes to us from Jonah Lehrer. Grit is the stubborn refusal to quit. I'm thrilled to bring you today's episode. Our guest shares his very unique no-quit story and the importance of giving versus taking, in addition to having a great Southern accent. In today's episode, he touches on some very important things regarding connecting and helping others. I'm proud to introduce Aaron Walker. Aaron, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, thanks for having me on, buddy. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking some time with us today. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen today?
I'm ready. Let's make it happen.
Good. I figured you'd answer so much. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire our listeners. And I was curious if you had either possibly a personal story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you didn't give up and you kept on going.
Well, I tell everybody that I have to make up with grit, determination, and perseverance what I lack in education, because I started my first business at 18 years old, didn't go to college, and we've built 12 successful companies. The first one I retired at 27, selling out to a Fortune 500. And so I want to tell you a story that happened to me when I was 40 years old. Let me back up. I'll try to make this as brief as possible. But at 13, I started working in a local pawn shop. At 18, met a couple of guys that had more money than they knew what to do with, believed in me, invested in me. We started a company. At 27, I sold out to a Fortune 500. I thought I was through. I'm like, hey, this is the American dream. I was broker and a convict when I was 18. Now I'm 27 and I'm able to retire. My wife woke me up from a nap one day. She said, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I mean, you're getting fat and you're getting lazy. You got to do something. I go back, buy the company I started with when I was 13 years old. We spend the next 10 years building an amazing company. I work 3 days a week. My partner worked the other 3 days, and I'm thinking life is unbelievable. 2 beautiful daughters. I'm 40 years old at this time. We've got a place on the beach, place in the mountains, big house here. Like, I got all the stuff, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. Until August 1st, 2001, Chris, I'm headed to the office, 7:30 in the morning. A guy named Enrique was crossing the street ahead of me. He didn't look my way, and I ran over and killed a pedestrian. And man, you talking about your life coming to a screeching halt. Mine did that day, and I won't take you through all the details, but they called me on Saturday. This was on a Wednesday, and they said, Mr. Walker, I'm sorry, Enrique didn't make it. And I want to tell you, man, I didn't come out of my bedroom for 3 days. I was devastated. I decided to sell the business, and we did. Robin and I took the next 5 years off. We traveled extensively. We built a new house. I had to get my legs back under me. And here's the decision. Here's the no-quit decision. I didn't have to work. Like, I had enough money to retire and do okay. But I thought, you know what? It's not fair to myself. I'm 40 years old. I was 45 at this time. Robin said, you got to go back to work. You're getting fat and lazy again. And so I went back to work, and I thought, I've got all this experience, and I could have quit and not done it. But I'm like, hey, I owe it to my kids. I'm going to owe it to my future grandkids, to colleagues and peers around me not to quit. And so I gradually worked through running over and killing that pedestrian. And that's my no-quit story.
Wow, I did not know the extent of that story. So A, I appreciate you sharing that, and B, that seems like it was quite a tough thing to get over. So I appreciate you sharing that with our listeners.
Well, here's the thing. You can decide, right, to quit, and it can be a lot less dramatic than that story. Or you can decide to pull yourself up, shake yourself off, and move on. And I just believe in living life to its fullest, looking outward, not behind me, because I can't undo anything that just happened. But what I can change is from today forward.
That's a great thing that you share, and I think that's something that we always try to get across to our listeners is you can't control what's happened, but what you can control is today and tomorrow moving forward. And I think we've all been dealt tough things in life, and I'm not going to say I know exactly what you went through with your story, but the reality is we all have our own no-quit stories, and at the end of that road, you have one of two choices. You keep going or you give up. So I'm glad that you kept on going. Wanted to ask you, Aaron, is if you had to describe yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Grit.
Grit. And grit's a word that's been thrown around a lot in the media. There's actually been 2 or 3 best-selling books. So I was curious if you wouldn't mind, in a sentence or two, or just in your own words, how do you define grit?
Well, here's the thing. I can tell you why I believe in grit. When I was a child, my mom wouldn't allow us to say the word can't. She would say, you might not be able to do it, but you're at least going to try. And when I was a kid, she had this little saying that irritated me at the time, and I've adopted it as my life mantra. And it's can't, couldn't do it, and could, did it all. And I didn't fully understand that when I was a child, but the mindset that we have to adopt in order to go forward. I used to tell my kids all the time, I would point out somebody successful, and I'd say the only difference between them and you is that they know something you don't, and you can figure it out. If you're willing to invest the time. Carol Dweck wrote a great book called Mindset. We've got to have that growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. The second mantra that I adopted in line of having the word grit as my mantra is that fear missing an opportunity more than you fear failure.
I like that.
Like I don't even like the word failure, but I like to think I'm missing an opportunity. And so I'm willing to go for it. So it takes a lot of grit, perseverance, and determination to do that.
Since you mentioned a book, I was curious. We often talk about different books, and I was wondering if there's something that you've read in the past or something perhaps you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Well, there's tons of books out there. Chris Voss just wrote a great book called Never Split the Difference. He was an FBI negotiator, and he teaches you in there how to negotiate properly. So, yeah, I'll give a shout out today to Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference.
That is a very, very good book and very interesting. And you're actually the first person that's mentioned that. So I love when we get to introduce a new book to our listeners. One of the things we talk about on every show is a daily quote. And I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
No, I've just shared 2 with you. Can't, couldn't do it, and could, did it all, and fear missing an opportunity more than you fear failure. Those are 2 things that I really try to hang my hat on each and every day so that I don't have regrets.
That's a great thing, is to live life with no regrets. If you could magically snap your fingers and switch into any industry and be unbelievably successful, but it has to be an industry that you've never been involved with, what industry would that be?
Oh, me. We kind of did that with the industry that we're in now in coaching. And, we run mastermind groups. And so that's an industry that we've kind of done that. I was in bricks and mortar for 38 years. We've owned 12 businesses. And then I retired back 6 years ago and got involved in this industry. So wow, can I say one that I'm doing?
Yeah,
that's the one that we're doing now. It's online. We do everything virtual. I've been in a mastermind group with Dave Ramsey for, Dave and I've been best friends for almost 25 years now. I started with him when he started. He was on one show in Nashville, and he invited me to be his sponsor, and I spent 21 years as his sponsor on his show. So we've been able to mastermind and be together. Dan Miller, 48 Days to the Work You Love, is in that group as well, and Ken Abraham. Ken's got about 115 books in print now, has wrote some of the most amazing biographies out there, and we got to do life together, and we're always challenging each other to go to that next level, to push each other, and they pushed me to do coaching. I said, I'm not going to coach. I don't even want to coach. I'm 50 when I retired. I said, I'm not going to do anything. And Dan Miller said, that's the most selfish thing I've ever heard you say. And I said, what do you mean? He said, it's like, I got enough for yourself. Now good luck to the rest of you. He said, you need to coach. He said, you and Robin have been married over 30 years, soon to be 38 years. You've had 12 businesses. You need to start coaching. So Dave invited me to do Entree Leadership Mastery. He said, I'll gift it to you. Just come and do it, see if you like it. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. It's a $10,000 gift. I'll take you up on it. So I went and did it, and I loved it. And then I went and did Innovate at Dan Miller's, and he texted me. We all live here in Nashville together, not far from each other. And Dan texted me, and he said, Big A, he said, people were leaning in, listening to your stories. And I said, well, maybe I'm just a good storyteller. He said, no, you've got something to say, and you need to start coaching. Well, I told you that story to share with you that it was pushing me to those upper limit challenges, right? Gay Hendricks talks about it in The Big Leap. And it was pushing me to an area I'd never been in the online world. I didn't have a Facebook. I didn't have a following. I'd never done a podcast interview. I'd never coached anybody. I'd never led a mastermind group. However, I'd been involved for 2 decades in mastermind groups, and they really pushed me. And now we have a pretty large following. We have 9 mastermind groups that we facilitate, and we have national and international clients that we coach as a result of people pushing me outside of my comfort limit.
You know, mastermind is something we often talk about on our show. We also talk about mentors and helping others. I was curious if within a couple sentences you could just describe what you feel masterminds are in your best definition, because it's something that Napoleon Hill wrote about in his great book many decades ago, and it's something I think that is just as valuable today.
Well, if not more so, because there's so many more opportunities today than there was once before. But it's where you subject yourself to the scrutiny of non-biased people. If you ask a family member or you ask someone that's a peer, they're going to give you a biased answer. But if you ask someone that has nothing to gain or lose as a result of what they tell you, they're going to tell you the truth. And so Dave Ramsey invited me to be in his mastermind group decades ago. I didn't even know what it was, never even heard of one. And he said, come on, Big A, just trust me on this. He said, show up to my conference room on Wednesday morning, 7 o'clock. And he said, I'll introduce you to the guys. So I went and I was nervous, Chris. I mean, I was like uncomfortable. It's like, I don't know these guys. I don't know anything about what they're doing. Well, the more I went, the more I liked it. And the more I was able to let that veil down. And I was able to be transparent and vulnerable and honest, because there were no competitors in there, no family members, there were no peers. There were just people that could tell me the truth. And so the more I went, the more I enjoyed it. And it radically changed my life, because it gives me a huge amount of accountability. It allows me to share things that are very personal. I can share personal things in my life with Robin and I and my kids and not feel a sense of people being judgmental. I can share business ideas and they go, Big A, that sucks worse than anything I've ever heard. You must have thought about that in the shower. That is like the worst idea I've ever heard. Or they go, man, I can introduce you to this guy, and the resources and the connections that they can give you as a result of it. Here's the biggest thing, is that we often have great ideas, but we don't share them. And when we don't share them, we don't execute on them. If you want to get something accomplished, get people around you that ask you about it weekly, and get people to hold you accountable. And now you've got to execute. You got to go forward on it, and you'll accomplish most things. So there are so many valuable aspects to being in a mastermind group that I can't even begin to tell you in an hour interview what that is. But it radically changed my life, Chris.
No, I appreciate that. And you mentioned something that is our favorite word, is the word accountability. And that's the one thing that we talk about our company, No Quit Living, all the time, is the importance of accountability. But before you can be accountable to somebody else, you need to be self-accountable. So I'm glad you shared that little tidbit about what masterminds are, because I think you mentioned right after I asked the question is, in today's day and age, it's even more important, and there's more opportunities to be involved in masterminds and groups, and like you said, online forums, and whether it's via Skype or FaceTime, there's just so many opportunities to get in front of people. So I would recommend to any of our listeners to take a look at mastermind, or maybe build and grow your own mastermind, because one of the things you talked about is you share your ideas and people will give you their non-biased opinion on a good idea versus a great idea versus maybe this might not be the best thing. But when you are with like-minded people, that's also about the connection. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's very similar in some ways to networking groups that do have a mastermind component about helping others. So thank you for sharing that as well.
Sure.
So Aaron, wanted to ask you a question. If you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Yeah, build relationships sooner with more intentionality. And my dad was a master at that. He wasn't a very good businessman, but everybody loved him, right? They loved to hang out with him because my dad was always giving. And I would say adopt the giving mindset rather than the taking mindset. I quote a lot of books because I read nonstop, but Adam Grant wrote Givers and Takers. And you're one or the other. And we teach people on a daily basis to be a giver. And Chris, it just works. We literally spend 25% of our time looking out. We're doing endorsements. We'll do interviews. We'll do video endorsements on LinkedIn. We'll give words of encouragement. We edify. We lift up. We empower people. We connect people. I'm a huge connector. I'm constantly connecting people. And as a result of that, I get asked to be on a lot more interviews. I get connected to a lot more people because I have that giving mentality. So I would say with intentionality, learn to be a giver and build relationships faster.
No, I love that. I love that advice. And you said the giving mentality. We also talk about paying it forward, which is all about connecting and providing value to others. So I'm glad that you have a very similar mindset. I wanted to ask you maybe a little bit of a different question. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
One of the best communicators on the planet, and I've actually got to meet him, Dave Ramsey and here friends, and he's brought him to our mastermind group. Andy Stanley is one of the best communicators on the planet. And I really like the way he teaches. Although I've been in a mastermind with him, I've never had dinner with him. I think I would really enjoy that. Matter of fact, now that you've said that, I may reach out and see if I can make that happen. But I think that would be an amazing evening, have dinner with Andy Stanley.
No, I like that. And I wanted to ask you if there's anything exciting that you're working on or you'd like to talk to our listeners about.
There's a number of things that we're doing now. I've just released a new book called View from the Top, and you can get that anywhere. We're working on a course right now, a done-for-you mastermind, as a matter of fact, because for 2 decades now, I've been involved weekly for 2 decades, and we're developing a white label podcast, mastermind done for you. And so that's pretty cool. And we're also doing a course out of our book right now on a number of topics. There's about 15 topics. So those are 3 things that we're working on right now.
No, I definitely would recommend your book to our listeners. And you said you can get anywhere. Is there anywhere specific that you prefer, or they can get anywhere?
Yeah, no, you can. It's in the airports. It's in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, Walmart, Amazon. You can go to my website, viewfromthetop.com/book. You can get it anywhere. But the book's really made great progress since it's been out.
Congratulations on that. Before we let you go, Aaron, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to share with our listeners.
Just go out there and go for it. A lot of people steal your dreams. Don't get yourself around naysayers. You want to be around people that are realistic, like people in mastermind groups that can take you to that next level and they can encourage you. Just don't spend a lot of time with the naysayers. The other thing that Robin and I did 15, almost 20 years ago now is we turned the news off. And you're like, Big A, you're not informed. Yes, I'm informed. I can find out everything I need to, but I just can't sit there every night and listen about wars and murders and politics and rapes and stabbings. I want to fill my mind with positive things, positive information, great podcasts like No Quit Living. I want to listen to things that edify me, that encourage me. I want to listen to great TED Talks, read great blogs, and use that information so I can go out and change the world. So devote your time to things that are impactful, that can make a difference.
I like that. I appreciate the great advice, and I think we talked about that before we went live on the recording, is that was the number one thing that was really important for us when we started No Quit Living, is just to make sure that it's a place where people can come to for that positive advice, great stories, and opportunities to listen to others that had the chance to give up or to keep going. So I really appreciate that. And last question, Aaron, and I promise it's the best and the easiest question. What's the best way for our listeners to connect with you? Is that via your website or social media?
Yeah, just go to viewfromthetop.com and you can find me on all platforms.
Well, listen, Aaron, I truly appreciate your time. You shared some great stuff, and I definitely would recommend our listeners to connect with you and also to check out viewfromthetop.com.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I enjoyed it. See you, buddy.
To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, grit, Aaron really addressed some very simple yet extremely important pieces of advice. Aaron mentioned how when he was growing up, his mother didn't let him use the word can't. I think that is awesome, and it is a word that we should all try to remove from our daily vocabulary. We might not be able to do something, but we won't ever accomplish anything without trying. Aaron also spoke in detail about the importance of masterminds, which is a topic we have discussed on many of our shows. A mastermind is a group of like-minded, non-biased individuals that you can discuss ideas with and receive advice, suggestions, and potentially receive introductions from as well. I personally have been involved in masterminds, and I think they're a great way to learn from others as well as to give back and help others. Aaron shared a great quote of his and personal advice that he fears missing an opportunity more than he fears failing. In his parting words, Aaron suggested that we just get out there and go for it. He also mentioned the importance of surrounding yourself with encouragers, and I could not agree more. So my question to you today is twofold. First, who do you surround yourself with? And secondly, are you a giver or a taker? In your interactions today with others, I challenge you to be a giver. Give of your time, your friendship, or maybe just by doing a good deed. I challenge you to give today as you go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.